All right, folks, welcome. Comic Book Wednesday is upon us, and you know what? We always start with a comic book talk. Another great guest with us, Jason Sandberg, is here. He is the writer, artist, colorer. He's the one that made all the errors that you might find. I mean, I don't know. He's the guy, and I got him here to hang
Even
with us.
even the typos were mine. However, my test readers caught them all. So when you get this in your dear hands, readers, there won't be any typos, I promise. But if you love it, I'll take all the credit. If you don't like it, I am all to blame because, as you mentioned, I am the jack of all trades, doing everything on this here book.
It is a passion of love. I'm so happy that our paths crossed and I was able to see this and check it out. It was a lot of fun to be able to check that out. It was so great to be able to fit it in because you've been swamped with this campaign. So we're headed into the final month already, and
Mhm.
it's just been a whirlwind. So before we get too much further down that rabbit hole, though, Jason, thanks for hanging out with me. But introduce yourself a little bit. Like, are you this longtime comic book guy, or is it like it's like something you've always wanted to do? Give us a little bit of the background of how we got on this journey.
So my first comic book that I recall purchasing was Captain America 214 in 1977. And I was 6 years old. My grandmother took me to the pharmacy. I picked it up, and when I opened it up, it was Jack Kirby. I didn't know it was his last issue, but it was Jack Kirby on Captain America in the 70s. It just popped off the page, and it was like a magic trip. Now, all visual artwork is an optical illusion, where on a two-dimensional plane, you're creating the illusion of volume and so forth, and depth and perspective. But with Jack Kirby's comic books, there was this other aspect of this energy, this motion that just kind of, it just mesmerized me. So that began my love of comic books in general and Jack Kirby in particular. And then fast forward to 1983 at the comic book chain of stores in Minnesota here. I stumbled upon Nexus number 2 by Mike Baron and Steve Rude, and that blew me away. Here
Mm.
was this whole other door opened up because while I loved Marvel, loved Captain America and Jack Kirby and John Byrne, suddenly with Nexus, I saw that independent comics could be better drawn, better written, have better paper, have better paper, just everything, right? Just I was just amazed, and from there I began to diverge, where I still kind of kept a foot in the waters of Marvel. Loved Sal Buscema's run on the Hulk and John Buscema's run on Avengers, and just I kept my foot in there. But then I began to dive into the indie world. So I was reading Cerebus, Nexus, ElfQuest, Zot, Dreadstar, and there's so many great. It was such a great time for indie comic books. The stuff that Rick Veitch
It's
was
true.
doing, and so that maintained my love of indie comics and also the potential of indie comics. And obviously I observed what happened with Image and so forth. And then fast forward to the late 90s. I was out of college and I said, hey, you know what? I want to do this. So I actually published Jupiter as a black and white indie comic book. It was distributed through Diamond, ran 9 issues, and it was one of those things where it was critically acclaimed, but the sales just were flat. And so I was getting these mixed messages from the market. Like, the sales weren't going down. The people who bought Jupiter back in the 90s, they loved it. They kept buying it. They still reach out to me today saying, hey, I'm so upset that you stopped doing it. But I couldn't move the needle. And I worked with Diamond. Diamond loved the book. They thought it was, they couldn't, they wanted to help me find the right niche for it. So I would work with Diamond to send out these promo packs where we would say, okay, let's put together a sample pack of a free issue of Jupiter with a cover letter, and let's send it to the top 200 stores that move Cerebus. Let's send it after the top 200 stores that sell 8 Ball, right? We kept doing this, and Diamond was sticking with me, but we couldn't move the needle. So I had
Mhm.
to do a gut check where it's like, okay, the market's not telling me to stop, but it's not telling me to continue. So I had to hit pause because it was my late 20s. And when you're in your late 20s, there's certain things you have to do that you can't go back in time and fix, right? Family, career, mortgage, stuff like that. So I continue to read comic books, continue to do artwork and so forth, but focused on career, family, and so forth. Jump forward to 2019, I become aware of crowdfunding, and I see the potentiality of being more direct than the direct market. I mean, meaning getting right in front of readers, and the opportunities there to find a niche. And the other thing is that um, for a long time, some observers have been saying that the American comic book, the North American comic book model is broken. we need to move towards a European model, right? But Marvel and DC, that goes against their interests. They don't want to do that. And what I think is happening, and this is my theory. My theory is that crowdfunding, where you are going, like I'm going to buy a Graham Nolan book 2 or 3 times a year, and it's going to be 40, 50 pages, and he's going to lavish as much attention and detail on it as he can. That's us. I think that's us going towards a European model where we're getting these volumes a couple times a year that are basically worthy of the bookshelf. They're not throwaway items like Marvel and DC's monthly titles. And I think that crowdfunding is the way station towards getting to that European model. And I don't know what the I don't know what the retailer landscape is going to be like at the end of this, but I think that that's what's happening without anybody realizing it.
It's all fair. I can't really argue with any of that. I think that it's a very interesting time to watch. It's because we're 30 years after Image, right? We're exactly 30 years after this crazy shift that created a viable third company that was on scale. And now 30 years later, we're seeing all of this develop. Obviously, big names like Ethan Van Sciver is one of the biggest. And then, of course, we saw what happened with Eric July. He used his platform to elevate sales, to make now news like to the normies. So how many normies now know of comics that may not have known, or put it on pause? And now it's like, okay, well, now you've been able to go back and say, all right, well, I'm going to dust off this passion project. I'd hit pause. I got all these ideas. I got all these things happening. And then let's get right to it. It's like, boom, we got it. We're live. Let's do this. And yeah, we're already there. We are at 141 backers.
Yeah.
Jupiter's done. We're gonna have this coming very soon. And this is a very exciting time. So
Yeah.
This has all of the details. This will be in the description, folks. Make sure you check it out. Jupiter issue number 1. I'll get the links there for you guys so you can see this. All your synopsis is here about Brendan Marshfield, teenager trapped in an unhappy home until the discovery of a magical amulet that gives her the ability to escape to anywhere or stay to become a hero. So all the details are there for you.
Yeah, that's the dramatic choice between fight or flight. Is she going to run away and never have to do homework again, get away from an unhappy home, never have to grow up and get a day job and go anywhere, do anything, or is she going to stay and fight? And as part of staying and fight, she has to her heroic journey is saying this new ability that I've got. How am I going to weaponize it? How am I going to weaponize it for self-defense? And then how am I going to begin to weaponize it to defend others? And inadvertently, she's going to become a superhero. And in the world of Jupiter, it's like our world where the superheroes only exist in comic books. And diegetically within Jupiter, there's these these quasi Jack Kirby comic strips that are in there. But the point is that she's going to be unique. One of the problems that I have with Marvel and DC and a lot of mainstream comics is that they're overcrowded with superheroes. They're not unique. They're too similar. It's too crowded, right? You open up a issue of the X-Men or you open up an issue of the Avengers. It's like take your superhero to work day. They're everywhere, right? They're not special. So in Jupiter, you're going to be going into a world where you're going to see her become a superhero. There's going to be supervillains coming from other dimensions and so forth, but she's going to be unique, and those around her are going to be looking up to her. They're going to be challenging her. They're going to be trying to get in her way and prevent her from doing this. But lo and behold, she's going to become her world's only and greatest superhero, and people will be looking at her in awe, and you're going to be rooting for her, and then it's going to be quite a roller coaster ride with the stakes continuing to rise.
I really also love the fact that you're hitting the nail on the head too about like this move to make just random characters, derivative characters. You pick a book up. I can't remember what it was. I was reading. It was X-Men, but I don't know exactly which issue or anything like that. And I was like, the comic book nerd, only knew of like 30% of the characters. And I'm like, okay, something is seriously wrong if you have diverged this quickly in the last 5 years, especially where you don't have the core legacy infrastructure. And then what you do have left is unrecognizable to what I can connect to. So it's like, well, this isn't really the Cyclops and the Wolverine that I remember. It's like they're just not the same guys. Like, what has happened, right? Or they're completely changed, where you get into a Miles Morales argument where you're like, well, that's not even Peter Parker. It's a completely different character. So you have that. So here you're trying to build a universe around this character who, is very interesting and very dynamic. And then, like I said, I told Jason, I said, yeah, when I saw this Kirby tribute stuff, like, I'm like, wow, this is like my jam. And obviously, one of the things I talk about with Watchmen is there was never a way for them to put that in the movie. Like, there's no way to adapt the depth of
Tales of the
Watchmen, of
Black
the
Freighter. Yep.
yeah, the stories within the story type stuff. And here we have something that's doing that exact same thing where you're like, oh man, there's a story in the story. And I'm like, wow, I'm really, really down for this. This is really, really cool. Very interesting, that kind of thing. How did she get born? How did you birth her? Like, what was her Brenda's origin in your brain, so to speak?
Yeah. So, about 2019 or so, when I decided I wanted to get back into doing comic books, I knew I wanted to do a Kirby homage. So I had Captain Kleinbottle first, and Captain Kleinbottle is that Jack Kirby style character. He's always got a star. He's always got blue and yellow, and so I knew I had him as one pole, right? He was the North Star, and then I said, okay, I need somebody who's diametrically opposed to him. It's because I've got to have the fantasy world of literature and escapism, and I've got to have the real world where they're colliding, right? And so I said, well, I want to have someone who's female and someone who's obviously not super strong and muscular. So similar to what Joss Whedon did with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I took somebody who's not, if you picked him out of you wouldn't pick him out of a lineup to become a superhero. So I said, okay, I want to do a teenage girl, and I want to have her, completely not be like, I want her to start out in an unhappy place and then fight to self actualize and arrive in a happy and powerful place. And just began to put together bits and pieces and just develop this character, and then the world around her, her friends, her family, and so forth, and set her on this collision course. And as you read this series, um, there's going to be things that are just she's going to have all these choices, right? She's going to, obviously, the obvious choices: do I stay and fight, or do I get the heck out of here? But then how she uses her abilities and how she struggles with her abilities, that's going to be part of that story for these first several issues until she arrives at that becoming basically that superhero.
How was the writing process different for you? Decades later, like this. Like, this is a big time jump for you. Like, life has changed. So
Yeah,
how was it? How was it different for you?
yeah. So back in the 90s, I would usually I worked on Bristol board and in pencil, and I'd have an outline, and then I begin to I would grid out the page, and then I'd have my thumbnails, and then I would script it. And that was very frustrating because oftentimes I had to erase I semi-erased like whole pages and so forth. So jumping ahead to now, what my approach is I'll go for a walk, I'll get an outline in my head and so forth, and then I'll grab 3x5 index cards. And what I'll do is I'll thumbnail the action in the panel, and I'll just kind of put some blurbs on here, kind of the way Jack Kirby would put little blurbs in the margins for Stan Lee, just some quick blurbage, right? And then what I'll do is I'll lay them out on the floor, and then I'll begin to decide, okay, this is too much. I'll take this away, and then I'm going to add this. And so I kind of have I have things very unmolded. And then I begin to break them into pages. And every time I'm doing a page, I demand of myself, this has to exist as a page, right? This has to flow as a page. And then I'll basically scan the thumbnails, put it into Adobe Illustrator, and then I'll bring it into Adobe Fresco, and I'll go over the thumbnails with the Apple Pencil, and then I'll carry it back into Photoshop and do the coloring, and then in Adobe Illustrator, I'll do the typesetting and stuff like that. So I'm taking the approach of I have an end in mind, and I've got a path, but I'm chunking it out, and I'm making sure that kind of at the atomic level, the page. The page is the basic unit of the comic book, that it works as a page. Like if you look at the page, it draws you in. You can tell a story's happening. There's movement, there's variety, there's texture, and it's not just monotonous with like talking heads and things like that. And there's action, and I think that's something that I wasn't able to do, or maybe wasn't mature enough to do back in the '90s. So.
Interesting. How many issues are kind of done?
Mhm. So I have behind me a binder here, and it has 20 issues of this story, her journey, and then her new status quo. What I believe is going to happen is that as I do each issue, I'm going to be doing a third pass on it, where I'm going to say, "Hey, I want to pull a couple pages from issue 3 into issue 2." And when
Mhm.
I wrote them as 20, just to create the metronome and to create the beat. I did them in 20-page installments. So I've got 400 pages there. So what I believe is going to happen is that because Jupiter's 40 pages, I've got the canvas to say, I'm going to take my 20-page for issue 2. I'm going to pull a third or 2/3 of issue 3 into that and make it 30 some pages, right? And then the main story is going to be whatever the main story needs to be. And then the remainder of those 40 pages, I can do little palette cleansers, little short stories and things like that, to kind of flesh it out. So I've got guardrails for myself. I've got a direction, but I don't have handcuffs. So I can maintain my spontaneity. The script itself, it's gone through 2 drafts. I'll go through a third or fourth polish as I'm putting together issue 2 and subsequent issues, but I'm not doing a Jar Jar Abrams where I'm starting strong with really great premises, and you're really intrigued by what's going to happen, and then I don't have a plan. I've got a fantastic plan, and I hope people join me and stick around for the adventure.
See what he did there, folks. See, you can see why I would get along with somebody like this. He's dropping J.J. Abrams references on us like that. He's very sly. He's very sly with that. See, all right. So I can't do it that way. I got to go back over here to this one because I want to look at the tiers. So Skybolt tiers only $20, folks. So there's a Skybolt tier right here. You have all
Yeah.
your information. When you click that, it'll open up and give you some of the details, so you'll know.
Yeah, actually, if you would you mind sliding up to the top, because there's actually a $10 tier.
Yeah.
So the Thunderbolt tier is $10. It's a 40-page comic book, and because we hit the $5,000 stretch goal, anyone who backs on any of the tiers is going to get the stretch goal, which is a Captain Klein Bottle fan club membership. And this is a little 24-point PVC laminated fan club card. It's obviously a fan club that exists in the world of Jupiter, but it's a fun little memento. And again, Captain Kleinbottle is that Jack Kirby inspired character. And then in true 1970s comic book fashion, it's sponsored by a pie company. And because Captain Kleinbottle is a time traveler, the dates on the membership card run backward in time from 2023 to 1953. So regardless of what tier you back on, we've hit the $5,000 stretch goal. So you'll get this card on top of a 40-page full color comic book.
That's awesome. So, all right. So there's that one, and then here's your $20 tier, so you can see all your different. Like I said, each time if you're not familiar with Indiegogo, you click this, it will open this up and expand it for you here. So you have all your thing here where it talks about Jupiter, the printed edition, the postcard portfolio, and the fan club card. Right.
Yep.
You go down again. Here's the Jovian tier. And when you click that, it'll open up. It'll tell you got the same stuff you had before. Then you're going to add a little bit more because this has the campaign medallion. So all of that is in here for you, folks. Each time you click and open it up, it'll give you the details, and you'll see the photos and things like that too. Not that complicated. And then when you come back over here on the left, when you scroll down to the bottom, which we were doing earlier, I was all up and down his page here, trying to make sure I understood where everything was.
It's
Sure
a lot of eye candy on this page here, people. So take your time browsing.
So here's the coin. Here's the membership club, fan club card, that kind of thing. So all that is in there, and then of course in here you've got all your different tiers on the right hand side. And you just kind of keep scrolling. You can go all the way down through. So your charity tier. So you have the extra copies here. Here's your retailer tier. So you get 6 for 40. You get how many are there now?
8. There's 8 for 40. So
8 for 40. So like $5 a piece, guys.
Exactly. The retailer tier, I'm going to go to Diamond and Lunar after I fulfill. But for those retailers that are out there, And if you're an eBay retailer, I still think you're a retailer as far as I'm concerned. So I wanted to make it available. If somebody's excited about this book and they want to get copies to sell, to bag and board and sell and so forth, whether it be brick and mortar or eBay, I want to make this available to you. And I heavily subsidize the shipping on the retailer tier. I've been very fortunate. The 5 or 6 comic book shops that I frequented in here in Minnesota, the owners have always been great to me. They've always looked out for me. They've always given me great discounts. They've always set aside my pulls and so forth. And I want to give back to the retailers and make this available. And the other thing is that people might ask, why is it only $10 for 40 pages? I'm basically reintroducing myself because I did indie comic books in the late 90s, but I have not been active. And there's many people who obviously have no idea who I am. So this lower price point is my way of saying, please come on early, help back the printing of the book. But it's me making myself as widely available as possible to reintroduce myself and get people curious and interested in what I'm doing. And I think you're going to find in Pages of Jupiter things you didn't even realize you were missing, right? I think there's a lot of good variety in here, a lot of great quality, and I'm hoping to offer this lower price point to attract people to try to give it a shot, try something new.
Yeah, that's exactly why I think that we needed to talk about this because I people are calling it the Iron Age. They have different
Mhm.
nicknames for it. Here's my thing. I love comic books, right? I love passion projects. I love people that are being creative, and it's never been easier and more interesting to do that. And you're meeting a guy who was in the industry, did something. He's working down that avenue and had to back up for a minute. Life gets in the way, right? You're like, and I can relate very much to you. You're doing your thing. It's not even that you're not successful. It's like you just don't get over this hump to
Yeah,
make it go next level,
right.
right? Because I worked more in like alternate media. So I work more like in website stuff and radio stuff and that kind of thing. It's like it's not that you're ever unsuccessful. It's just like, sorry, well now we have a time where the world is there to be recalibrated. And you're like, okay, the equation has changed. The game rules have changed. Let me go back and revisit this. And I think it's so cool that you've been able to kind of pour all this out there and do it in a way that, for $10,
Yep.
you can get a book or like, go crazy and give them away. It's like for $40. I mean, literally there's other campaigns that are $40, guys. And you get your Christmas presents for a whole bunch of comic book people. Look at that. It's crazy. So,
And
um,
the other thing that I want to point out that I think is unique is that Jupiter is 95% done. Okay. So during the campaign, I'm doing some final tune-up on the art. But when the campaign is over, it's going to go off to the printer. And if you back this book, you should have it before 4th of July. Okay. So this won't be the case where you're sitting there looking at the calendar like, what's going on? Why hasn't Sandberg shipped his book? Why isn't he fulfilled? As a creator, I'm never going to launch a campaign until the book is 95% done because I don't think it's fair to you out there to back something and then 9 months later, a year later, 2 years later to get the book. So my commitment to you is that I may have a sign up page for issue 2 later this fall, but I'm not going to launch the campaign until the book is essentially done or close enough to done where I know that I can send it to the printer at the end of the campaign. I think that makes Jupiter a bit different from some of the other projects that are out there. But it's my commitment to you that that if you're going to be mad at me, you're going to be mad at me because you want issue 2 and I haven't launched the campaign yet. You won't be mad at me because you haven't gotten issue 1.
that's the problem to have. That's the problem to have. Like, where's the next issue? You want more.
Yeah.
That's the problem to have. So, folks, we're not going to get into this. I know he probably would not be the cause of it, but I will tell you, YouTube does not play nice with me. We've done the videos before, and they always get flagged. They create issues for me because I'm like, well, then now what do I do? Do I mute the sound? Do I remove it? Do I do whatever? So I don't want to do that to anybody. But go there. Each one of these, you can see there's little videos you can play, gives you some information. There's a trailer for the entire campaign. And then when you scroll down, again, on the left-hand side, it scrolls independently from the tiers on the right. And when you get down to the bottom, you get into the videos that are for each one of these things. Here's the early word perk, and here's the postcard, here's the coin, and the stretch roll. So all that's there. Obviously, this is the information that'll be linked there for you to do that. So, Jason, where are you at now on reading other comics? Like you kind of still dabble with the world's just gotten
Yep.
kind of wacky, and I
Give
find,
me give me
yeah,
1 second. I'm gonna go to the bookshelf. I'll be right back. Give me just a moment.
okay, all right. So while Jason does that, he'll be right back. Thank you guys for being with us on Comic Talk. We'll definitely have at least one comic book review later today. Didn't get to comic book stuff as fast as I wanted to because I totally got hung up on one issue. And I think when you see it, you understand. I know I'm way behind on reading some of these things. You guys have been blowing up some sort of great recommendations and that kind of thing. But I want to make sure I do try to give the time that each thing deserves. So that's kind of how I got hung. But that will be later today after this. So make sure you check that out. And we'll do Comic Talk every Wednesday and meet people like Jason along the way. So he's back. Let's get him. All right, buddy. What's going on? What do you got?
All right. So obviously, I'm backing other crowdfunders. So I've got Rec Planet. I'm looking forward to getting the Matacumba Bay from Graham Nolan. But this right here, I want to bring people's attention to this. This is I mentioned earlier Nexus, right, by Mike Baron. This is a book that Dark Horse published just like 2 or 3 months ago. It's another installment of Nexus. It's an OGN. It's a standalone story, art by Richard Bonk, and it was published by Dark Horse Comics, right? So this is something that if you're not familiar with Nexus or used to read Nexus, go check this out. I think it's very important that we out there as comic book readers, we basically we vote with our dollar and we send a message to Dark Horse. We want more of this. Now he's doing another Nexus graphic novel with Kelsey Shannon. Steve Rude is doing a standalone Nexus project himself. And then there's a third OGN that Mike Barron's working on for like next year. So go check this out. If your LCS doesn't have it, ask for it. It's Nexus Nefarious. It's very good. It's a good standalone story. Last year, the most beautiful book I came across was this one. It's by Ali Fell, and she's British. I think she's Scottish. She was a former animator, and she has been doing some OGNs. This one's called The Trick of the Light, and this I don't know how I stumbled across this, but it is just beautiful. So she almost draws like a John Romita. Let's see. So she almost draws like a John Romita. It's almost like 1960s good girl art. It's just beautiful. Now, it isn't just the fact that it's beautifully drawn. It's like a little Twilight Zone episode. And I'm not going to tell you more than that, but this right here is this, if go seek this out. She's on Twitter, and she's got like a Etsy store, eBay store, but it's called The Trick of the Light. It not only is it beautifully illustrated, it's a haunting kind of Twilight Zone episode. And that's all I'll say.
Very cool.
Another thing that's really cool right now is I mentioned Rick Veitch earlier. Rick Veitch did the Brat Pack, and he did Maxi Mortal and so forth. And obviously he had that wonderful run on Swamp Thing where he's probably the only one to ever take over a title from Alan Moore and do as good or better than Alan Moore did. So Rick Veitch took over Swamp. He was drawing Swamp Thing for Alan Moore, and then he took over the writing chores when Alan Moore left. And I loved Rick Veitch's Swamp Thing run. And you can, the comic book historians, you can talk to them about what happened. Rick Veitch was doing a time travel story where Swamp Thing kept jumping back further and further in time. I'm not going to tell you what happened, or what he wanted to do at the end of that story, but DC canceled that final issue of that storyline. You can go research it and find out for yourself what happened there. But he has been working with Rick Veitch has continued to do his own stuff. He's been doing Dream Comics, and he's basically doing Dream Comics. He's doing Maxi Mortal, and he's publishing them through Amazon Print on Demand. And so go to Amazon, look for Rick Veitch. He's got a whole bunch of, he's probably got a dozen books that he's done over the past 5 or 6 years that are available as print on demand. And I am just delighted that he's continuing to work, and he's working at his own pace. He's putting out 2 or 3 books a year, but they're worth the wait. It's just wonderful. And my first exposure to Rick Veitch was his epic limited series, The One, which was kind of Alan Moore before Alan Moore. So go seek out The One by Rick Veitch. It'll blow your mind. But I'm just delighted that he's continuing to work, and that he's sharing his work with us. It's just beautiful.
Jason, could you open that so we could see the inside?
Yeah. So it's this it's obviously it's kind of psychedelic dream comics. and let me find a pages. So
there we go.
So again, so Rick Veitch, he will do superheroics, and then he'll do some kind of crazy psychedelic stuff here, dream comics, and kind of philosophical stuff. But just wonderful, just wonderful. So those are my strong recommends, on top of the usual suspects like Isom and Cyberfrog and so forth. I think these are equally worth pursuing.
It is a fun time to be able to see how things have evolved and changed so rapidly. And I'm so happy that I was able to meet you and get to know you a little bit more like that. So what is, because you obviously, I mean, your work just reeks of Kirby influence.
Right.
But what is some of the other stuff that you kind of like hang your hat on? Like, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this or that and that kind of thing.
So obviously I Mike Barron and Steve Rude, that creative team, they're like the Lennon and McCartney for me in terms of independent comics, right? Also in my DNA is Scott McCloud. His work on Zot, his work on Destroy, that's in my DNA. The Mobius and some of the stuff that was published in heavy metal, that's in my DNA. Zap Comics, the Robert Williams and Robert Crumb, there's Zap Comics, that's in my DNA. And then when if I could, I would, and this is an oxymoron, I give my right hand to be able to draw like John Buscema. John Buscema is just effortlessly and fluid. He just, as a draftsman and as a storyteller, just amazing. So him and John Byrne and so forth, they're baked into my art style. I do my best to try to channel them whenever I can. But yeah, John Buscema is just amazing. And I unfortunately, I'm sure you know who he is, but I think a lot of the people out there that maybe picked up comic books in the past 20 years, they're doing themselves a disservice by not hunting down and discovering the fine work of John Buscema.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask about some recommendation. I'm glad you dropped John Byrne too, so they don't all have to hear it from me all the time. Every time I'm pointing out another John Byrne masterpiece or something else, I'm always dropping names like this because I'm like, because it seems like Stanley, and then of course there's a lot of Kirby and Ditko references, and then of course you have the Image guys, but it's like a lot of the oxygen kind of got sucked out of the room with all these other incredible creators. Like, people just don't even know their names. Like, so I was invited on a show and it's like mentioning in like I don't know, an influential I forget the terminology, influential comic book of all time or whatever. So I kind of cheated because I didn't pick a comic book. I just picked Lin Wein. And I'm like, you guys understand, like, we wouldn't have Lin Wein literally like went off script and said, listen, I want to do this. He like fought for us to get, Wolverine. Like, he's like, okay, I did this thing. I snuck it in Hulk. Can we get back to giant size X-Men? Like, it just like everything and sort of like this stuff. Yeah. Swamp Thing. But it's like, there's so many creators like this. And I'm so glad that you brought a few more to light for folks that are hopefully, and you're in chat, you're watching this premiere, if you're watching after time, rewind it, make sure you take notes of why. I'm glad he held them up. I like you to see art. I like you to see independent work. I like you to see how things have changed, because I think it's just great to meet other folks that are fans.
Another gem out there to hunt down is Dreadstar. Jim Starlin's Dreadstar series. Now, everybody who hears Jim Starlin thinks Thanos and maybe thinks about his Batman run where he killed Robin. I'm telling you, hunt down Dreadstar, his 1980s Dreadstar. You're talking about 30 issues, 30 some issues of just the best art, crazy storytelling. It was, in my mind, in my opinion, don't keep this between us. In my opinion, Dreadstar was better than Star Wars. So check out Dreadstar. Highest recommend. You can probably find them in the dollar bins, but check out Dreadstar. It will blow your mind. It's just fantastic.
We might have to cancel him over that comment, but it's okay. He doesn't know me as well as he thinks he does to go that far with it, but it's okay.
It's okay. It's probably not better than classic Star Wars. It's probably not better than classic Star Wars, but definitely you can make the
this omnibus is
Mhm.
probably inexpensive, so you even can get
Yeah,
this stuff. Like this is a fun look. If
yeah,
Starlin's name's on it, it's going to be some good. Oh,
yeah,
this is an interview he did. I
yep.
stumbled across something that had a really
And
a picture of the omnibus is what I was looking for. Little
I've
did I
got
know. So
and so they did a 3 set omnibus that covers all of the 80s work. I've got it on the bookshelf over there. I highly recommend. And then he's now doing OGNs. He's done one so far. He's funding a second one. So he has returned to this character. So it's well worth it to go hunt this stuff down. And I think the omnibuses, I think they published them in paperback as well as hardcover. So it should be pretty affordable. Certainly hunt them down. At least get the first one. If you get the first one, you're going to get hooked and buy the second and third. It's amazing stuff.
yeah, I agree. That's good stuff. Yeah, these are the names that I'm glad we're dropping and having some fun with it, that kind of thing. So, let me pull this up one last time here before we start moving our way towards a exit. Let me bear with the. I don't know. I don't know if it is it count as boomer. They'll tell me if I'm being boomery whenever I'm doing things wrong. So, but look, the folks are they just the link is in the description. All the stuff is there for you. Again, as low as $10, you can get yourself a copy. There's definitely just some different tiers. Very much a friendly price point, as well as some bulk prices for some quantity there for you. Even look at $100 commission there.
Mhm.
And then all the details you want here to kind of connect and get more information and make sure that if it's something that you're interested in, you can give it a whirl and definitely check out what Jason's been working on. Did you get Blurb by Scott McCloud?
I did, yeah. So, back in the
That
yeah, I know, I know, I
look
know.
at that.
That was pretty much that was pretty much the peak of my life right there. So, the story behind that is, back in the late '80s, early '90s, I send off my little zines and stuff to him and Dave Sim and as many other people that I looked up to, and he and I were something of postcard pen pals. Like we wrote back and forth a few times, but in 1999, when I was publishing Jupiter, he was writing Reinventing Comics, which is the sequel to Understanding Comics. And
Mm.
I had sent him off. I said, "Hey, I'm doing Jupiter. I'm having a great time." And he said, "Oh, interestingly enough, Jason," he wrote back. He said, I'm citing it in the next nonfiction book I'm writing, and I hope that's okay with you." I said, "Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, that's great. I'm honored, right?" So then the book gets published, Reinventing Comics. I look in the index. I pop to the page, and he basically described Jupiter as uncategorizable, and he put it next to Jim Woodring's Frank and Kyle Baker and another artist as this section of contemporary comics that you couldn't fit in a bucket. You couldn't figure. It was just, and I was just blown away, completely honored. And I told my wife, I said, if I never do anything else again, my whole life was worth it.
We're such nerds. It's
Creatively,
so
I know,
great.
creatively.
It's so much fun.
Yeah. So,
My my
so yeah,
wife asked if I was okay. Because I got the message on a Saturday, I think,
uh-huh.
when Graham Nolan said he would come on.
Awesome.
And
I
I think
know.
I just sat there for like a minute and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I wish you could understand what this means.
I know.
I don't know how to put it into words. I get to hang out for an hour or so with Graham Nolan and I don't
Yeah.
even know what to say right now." Like I
Yeah.
was yeah. So that was
I'm
kind of up there on my list of
yeah.
comic book nerd stuff.
I am
Meeting George Perez.
yeah.
George Perez was probably one of the gentlest, nicest, kindest of creators that
Yeah.
I ever met. I mean, this guy was beaming with a smile and happiness to just meet people. I met a lot, and I don't have a long list of bad experiences or anything, but of all the people, meeting George Perez was probably one of the most spectacular moments I can think of. Just golly, that guy was so friendly and fun to be around.
I never met him, but all the pictures, all the footage, I think it just shined through what you're saying. And
Yeah.
and I am so happy. I'm so happy for Graham Nolan, and Chuck Dixon, because
Mhm.
it is so wonderful what he's doing and how successful he is. And I think about the previous generations of veteran comic book artists and so forth, and where they were at and so forth. And I'm beaming with delight and pride and just happiness that he's not only is he alive and kicking and giving us great work, but just that he's financially doing such a good job, and he's making everybody eat his dust. It's just wonderful. So it's a wonderful time to be allowed to be a reader, to be a creator, and I hope everybody out there appreciates this is kind of a unique time in history, and I guaranteed it's going to continue, but we could not have done things like this 20 years ago.
Folks, listen, like I said, everything is right there to connect with Jason. He's on Twitter. You can reach to him that way. You can get all your updates. Get connected, like a $10 price point, man. It's like you just can't beat it. And it's going to be fun to get to see that work, get to see the new version of Jupiter, get to connect with Jason and find out more, that kind of thing. So make sure you do that, folks. And to Jason, I say thank you, my friend. Thank you, my brother, for being here, hanging out, talking nerdy comic book stuff with me. I'm so thrilled that we get to do this. This is again something we couldn't do 10 years ago.
Exactly.
I couldn't do this 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I was like, if somebody just told me to get a freaking USB camera and microphone, I mean, I've wasted how much time just writing reviews or blurbing about them on a radio for 7 minutes, and like I could have been doing this whole time. So
we would have met at a lobby at a con. It would have been super noisy. We'd both be tired. Our kids would be cranky.
Like, Pops, and I'd be like, Jason, and we're like, yes, yeah. So it's one of those things where now the world has gotten different, and I'm loving every minute. And I thank you again for your time and sharing your great creation with all these people, folks. If you're in there, thank you for hanging out with us. Please consider sharing this out, talking to people about it. Make sure people understand about another great campaign, another thing that's part of the Iron Age, and just cool stuff that you get to be a part of. And I appreciate it so much. And with that, let's let you guys go. Yes, another comic book review later on today. Join us next week for another comic book talk. Next week will be James Mealy. He'll be back on another episode of Why Is It Great, where we pick a single issue, talk about that. And then just fun stuff all week long on the Pops channel. Make sure you're subscribed, or you have questions, recommendations. Please keep those coming, because guys, I love all that stuff. So thanks with that, guys. Be blessed. Talk hard. Take care. I'm Pops.
Yeah. Right?